celebrating and showcasing extraordinary people who are doing incredible things to make our world a better place. This is Close Up Television. I'm your host, Jim Masters, and thanks for joining us. On today's episode, we celebrate Andrea Andree. Andrea is an empowerment coach, an energy healer, and owner of the Empowered Living Space, and she's a mompreneur. Her focus is working with moms who are feeling stuck and seeking to improve their lives, leverage their potential, and improve the ongoing process of being in a relationship with their child. She helps her clients break through their energetic blocks and restore the balance and flow of energy throughout the body and soul, clarifying what is important to them so they can overcome obstacles and empower them to create strategies for achieving their goals. Before going into coaching, Andrea was working at a corporate job that left her feeling drained every day while undergoing her own struggles as a new mom. One behavior that took her by surprise was how often she was yelling at and reacting to her small child. Seeking a more compassionate approach to parenting, she began exploring ways to regain control. It led her to learn about energy healing and also how it helps diffuse triggers. She realized that yelling and responding negatively was of her own choosing, and she didn't have to react so harshly. She learned that we all have an inner energy source we can tap into that can help us become better versions of ourselves. She uses these techniques in her coaching, which helps her clients enhance their sense of confidence and look towards the future with optimism and hope. Andrea says by helping her clients reduce painful triggers and understanding where the triggers come from, they'll begin to feel more at ease, more purposeful, and live more intentionally in amazing ways they never thought possible. Her hope is for people to embody that which they want to be in their everyday lives, to break free from disempowering patterns that rob us of our true happiness. Now, to learn more about how she helps her clients achieve this and to find out more about Andrea's life journey, she joins us today in the Close Up Television studio for this exclusive interview. Andrea, it's so great to have you here, and thanks for flying to the East Coast for our television studio interview. We did the radio show, which was fantastic. We had a great conversation, but wanted to expand a little bit more and learn a little bit more about what you do and share it with our television audience. What first inspired you to really want to go into this particular field of endeavor? Because I know you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. Connecticut is beautiful this time of year. I did not go into this expecting to have my own business, expecting to be a coach. It really started a little bit more personally for me. So my oldest daughter, she's almost 7. And so I remember I had her, I was working a corporate job at the time. And after those 3 months of leave, I took her to a daycare to go to a job that drained my soul.
What were you doing?
I was doing process improvement for a health insurance company. So it was really software-based, improving the software to make the workers' experience better. And there was something about that experience where I knew that I was ignoring something inside of me.
Yeah.
I've always had this feeling that I'm here to be of service to people and help people live better lives.
You're a people person. Yeah.
I'm a people person.
Yeah.
I'm here for people. I'm not here for corporations. And so it was starting to grow bigger and bigger within me. And finally, a few years later, I got to a point where I read a book that shattered my perceptions of who I was, what I thought life was, and that book allowed me to realize and gave me the courage that if you figure out what your soul is here to do and you start to do that work, then you will be supported. And so I said I could either do that, I could either do this thing, which I have no idea what it is, but I'm feeling this inner nudge, or I looked ahead at my life in the corporate world, 30 some years, and I said, I don't like the way that looks, I don't like the way that feels. And so I started down this path instead, which there's a little part in between, which that's sort of the work part of this. The personal part of this as a mom, I had kids, and right around the time my daughter turned 1, she started moving, getting into things. So she was not just staying put when I would put her down. And around that time I realized I'm much more reactive than I thought I would be as a mom. I was yelling, I was controlling, I was doing all of the things. I thought I would be this beautiful, passionate,
Everything
compassionate
would be
mom.
like on TV or in the movies. Where do you think that was coming from, that frustration that was built up? Was it because of the job too? Pressures of that?
There's a little bit from the job, but what I have learned is a lot of that's really a lot of the energy healing work that I do. So a lot of it is old trauma, old pain. That's really, it's surfacing.
Yeah.
And so we all have it, we all carry it. Kids will poke at it incessantly.
Yes. It's almost they know where those buttons are to push, right?
Yes, they were pushing those buttons. And so that's, as I learned to look at those from an energy first perspective, from a pain and trauma first perspective, as I taught myself how to release the energy of those, and I started being less reactive and less reactive over time. That's where those two ideas kind of married each other. I was working on my personal life as a mom, and then I realized this information would be so great for so many people, and it would help so many people. And at one point, eventually, when I decided I wanted to figure out what my soul is here to do, oh my gosh, I think this is what I'm here to do. I can help so many people. That's when I really decided to pivot into coaching and start to build my life towards a coaching perspective.
I know so many people are doing that. So many people have these, these great six-figure corporate jobs, and some of the friends of mine, and they've decided, who am I serving here? I'm not really serving, individuals in the way that I want to. I'm a people person, and I need that energy flow. I need to connect with people.
Absolutely.
So they've walked from those jobs. Some have retired, but others just said, I'm done, and they've started all kinds of different businesses where it's more of a direct approach with people, with humanity. Yeah. Was that a difficult decision for you? Were you nervous about leaving sort of the security of that corporate position?
Yes, I am in the process. So in 2 weeks, I am done. I am leaving. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, this was the impetus to get me to that point. But it's been a lot of mindset work around that, because we've grown up to believe we need the stability of the corporate world. We need to hustle to make money, all of the things. And a lot of that is not in alignment with the universe and the abundance and the way that the energy flows to the universe. And so there's been a lot of deconstructing from a lot of those old stories. So I've been working on this coaching business for over 2 years. I was not ready at that time to leave. I did not have the mindset to leave. I did not have the embodiment of the energy that I have now. And so in addition to the coaching and the business learning, I have had to work on myself to have the mindset where I could feel like this could be a source of income and I could make this work for me and my family.
You describe yourself also as a mompreneur. I love that. Tell us about that.
You. I use that a little bit cheekily, I would say, because I feel like being a mom is a job in and of itself. And so my kids are little. My daughter will be 7 on Christmas, and my son is 4. And so I jokingly say on my website, it's something around the effect of I'm feeding them, I'm taking care of them, I'm constantly keeping them from jumping off of tall things. Like, it's its own job. And so I wanted to use that to just highlight that I'm a mom, I work with moms, I get it. It's a life all in and of itself, in addition to the other things that we do.
So how did you get started with the energy healing work? What was sort of the process of getting yourself prepared and getting the experience to do it?
Yes, it was. I couldn't even say that this was something I knew existed 4 years ago. I got to, after the book that I talked about, so it's A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which is the one that just totally blew my world apart.
Blew it up for you, yeah.
It blew it up for me. Then I had listened to a podcast about screw your passion. A lot of people say follow your passion, but most people say, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about. So it was Elizabeth Gilbert. She said, follow your curiosity. And this idea of energy, for some reason, it was just lingering with me. I was starting to get curious about it. And I didn't know why, but just as I was starting to allow that in and say, I'm curious to know more about this energy work, then lo and behold, this advertisement popped up for this energy course on Mind Valley.
Wow.
And so I've just been following the breadcrumbs ever since, and I got into it and I just felt such a resonance with energy. And then I would learn more about energy healing in particular through some other courses that continue to pop up. And I realized that I was just really curious and just diving in and learning as much as I could. And interestingly enough, it ties back to my childhood, because as a child, I always wanted to make people healthier. I knew that there was an element of health. And I had planned on going to medical school for a really long time until I got that big old MCAT study book slapped on my table, and I said, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. But it was because I knew I was here for health, but the only way I knew how to fit that into a box was the healthcare system. But when I learned about energy healing and just the ways that that can impact people's health, it just felt like I was coming home to something I always knew, but I didn't really know. I didn't have the words for it. I didn't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
And so I kept just learning, and eventually I realized that I am a healer. That was what my soul decided to do before I came here. So I don't have a certification. I'm self-taught. But it feels so natural to me.
How do you describe, for those watching, how do you describe what energy work is and energy healing work? How do you actually break it out and define it? Maybe some examples of how it applies to everyday life.
Sure, a lot. So we've probably heard the term everything is energy.
Yes.
So, but what does that mean? I think a lot of people talk about that, but they don't exactly know what that means. And so part of this is hard because our human minds can't always make sense of it. And so I've just chosen to accept. Everything is energy. There's parts of energy that we can't see. They're sort of all around us, all these vibrations. And then energy slows down enough for us to have these physical bodies. So this is still the same stuff that energy is made out of. It's just a lot slower. And then another component of what I do is really the spiritual work. And our spirit, our soul, whatever term you want to use for it, our souls are energy. And I've come to believe that our souls are meant to energetically express through this physical form, unencumbered. Basically, our soul feels the inspiration to make music, and we make music. But then we've got this human experience, which has thoughts and emotions that come as part of it. And so those thoughts, well, remember that time someone told you that you're terrible at music? And so our thoughts come in and sort of stop that free flow.
Those self-limiting beliefs, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Those self-limiting beliefs. And so for me, energy work, I believe at the core what it's all intending to do is get at all of the stuff that's blocking our soul from free-flowing as it wants to flow. And in a lot of that experience for humans, it's really those thought patterns, those suppressed emotions that we shoved down at some point in our lives and never allowed ourselves to feel. All of that is blocking the free flow of our soul energy from really flowing through our lives and expressing through our lives.
Did you experience that yourself over
absolutely.
years? You did.
I have been doing this on myself for years now, once I learned about this. So I'm sure people have heard of acupuncture and Reiki.
Yeah.
And so those all get at the energy as well. I feel like those kind of just give you a nice clearing. You don't really know what's in there. You just flush some of the energy.
Like a cleanse, yeah.
You get someone in and you clear the pipes, and then you've got that free flow back. The type of energy work I've done is really more from a growth perspective, because I feel like there's some energy, some disempowering beliefs we have to know are there in order to clear them. And so I had to know the thought, who are you to think you can be a coach? I had to know that was there in order to look at it, clear the emotion behind it, and then choose differently. Choose something more in alignment with, well, I know I can be a coach. I know this is what I'm here to do. So I had to actually know that that was there, look at it, feel it, and then I could choose differently at that point. So there's a lot of different flavors of energy healing work. You'll hear a lot of, I think, as many healers as there are modalities, there's a lot of ways to look at it. Everyone's a little bit different. Mine really marries very well with the coaching because it's got the mindset component, but it has the emotional component as well, because a lot of it has to do with suppressed emotions that we didn't allow ourselves to feel. And then once we've got more of a clear channel, then I tune my clients into spirit and their truth. And I say, okay, well, what is true for you now that you've cleared out that old energy?
What are some of the things that the clients come to you for? What are they dealing with? What are some of the frustrations and maybe, like you say, blockages that are happening in their life? Obviously, the last few years, we've all experienced, the pandemic and all.
Yes.
We've experienced things that generations have never experienced before. So it's brought on a lot of different types of things we've had to deal with. But that coupled with just overall, what are some of the things that you see people experiencing that they come to you to hopefully heal from?
Yeah, one of the clients that I had was a big worrier. She worried a lot. So she wasn't a mom herself, but she was a teacher. And I feel like she's got the energy of a mom. She's got nieces and cousins and other children that she loves very, very much. But she worried about them. And worrying to me is a very disempowering energy, because our energy is very potent and powerful when we use it right, but worrying about other people is like leaking it out. I've heard people say worrying is like praying for something bad to happen for somebody.
Right.
And so we worked on her worry. What's the source of her worry? How does worry feel in your body? Is that the way you want to feel when you worry? And then we talked about how is that worry energy being projected onto the subject of your worry, and is that what you want? Do you want to send them energy around all these bad things you're worrying about? So then we taught her, we worked through how to imagine the opportunities that you want for them and to create the space energetically for that. And so it takes the same amount of energy to worry or to hope for the best. And so we got her focused on, well, what do you want for them? Can you create the space energetically for that experience to come into their lives and detach from the outcome? Because we can't control what anyone does in their lives, and as much as we want to. And so the best thing that we can do that I talked about with this client was understanding how worrying feels in your body, project onto the subject what you want for them, what you hope for them, but then you can't make their outcome, you can't attach to whatever happens from the outcome from that. And so that was a big one that I worked on with one of my clients. I've had other people come to me just talking about, I feel grief. So she was in a bit of a grief cycle because her father had just passed away. But when you open a grief window, a lot of grief from your past will come up if it was never dealt with. She was mixing that with grief over what was happening in her job. And so I just coached her through that a little bit, through journaling and feeling and releasing and just allowing yourself to look at all of that.
How has the pandemic sort of also come into play a little bit? People have really, been struggling with a lot of different things, and it's allowed many things to rise to the surface, sort of pull the veil back on a lot of things in just day-to-day living that maybe people weren't thinking about or addressing earlier. What have you found with that with your clients?
I will say, I'll start with a personal story, I would say. For me, what the pandemic has allowed, as it's bubbled to the surface, I know that it's bubbling to the surface for me to see it and release it. Because none of what's bubbling to the, we're not meant to suffer. We're not meant to have things feel bad. But in order to get to that good feeling place, we do have to see and release all of those bad feeling things that are sort of following us from our past. And so that's the approach I have taken since the pandemic started, was really, as something presents itself that doesn't feel good, for me that's a growth opportunity, that's a learning opportunity, that's an opportunity to see it and release it and grow and expand into a different part of me. And so I've talked about that with clients. I don't think everyone is quite there yet. I'm still in the business building part of my business, and so I can see it happening, but no one yet is coming to me to say, help me with this. And so I think we're getting close to a tipping point where that would happen. But I feel a lot of people, I'm seeing a lot of discomfort at work right now. A lot of people, what worked in the past does not feel good. The corporate ladder, the fancy titles, none of that's feeling good to people. That's probably what I see most right now.
Right, yeah.
The long hours, the giving all of yourself. And so I have to wait until the people are ready. And I'm
There's still
seeing
transitioning, there's transformation that's still happening for them right now as we speak, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the Great Resignation and all these other things that have happened.
Absolutely.
How does energy healing help us sort of release the triggers, and how does it lead us to a more purposeful life and to more happiness overall?
Absolutely, yes. So energy healing, so let's talk a little bit about our triggers first. And so I look at us as we're this spirit, which is sort of the core of who we are. And then around our spirit, we have these blobs of the disempowering thoughts and the suppressed emotions. And those are, we carry the energetic pains from our past. And it could be big, significant trauma, or it could be someone made fun of me on the playground and that didn't feel good. Like it runs the gamut. I allow it all. It's all important. And so what I see as those triggers is really there's an outside world that sort of pokes at one of them, and it pokes at it and it swells up that painful emotional feeling that wasn't allowed to be felt before. And that's where our triggers come from, is there's this overwhelming feeling in our body that we don't like, and we've never been taught what to do with that. And so what most of us do, we yell it, we project it on other people, we do something to think what we think makes us feel better, but in reality, it's just swelling up when what we need to do is feel it. So energy, emotions want to be felt. And so the triggers come from, they're swelling up, but we're not feeling them. We're trying to suppress them and push them back down. But the more we get poked, and once they're poked, the more we allow ourselves to actually feel and release, then it's sort of taking one of those lumps out of the pot, and we have space for more of that good feeling soul energy to come in. And so I think of it in one case like a jar of rocks, and each of those rocks is one of our triggers. If you allow yourself to actually feel and release the trigger, now you've made space for something more feel good to come in. And so that can be creating space for your soul. That could be intentionally tuning into energy. So what we haven't been taught is we're kind of like radio receivers, and there's all sorts of frequencies of energy all around that we can tune into at any time. So I could call in the energy of joy and let that fill my body and start to train my body to feel that. We haven't been taught how to do that, but that's another way we can start to create some space for some of that feel-good energy to start to come back in.
How about happiness? You know, happiness really can't be manufactured.
Correct.
I mean, unless maybe you're going to Disneyland or Disney World, where it's temporarily manufactured for the enjoyment of the time there, but then you leave Disney World, you leave Disneyland, and you go home to your day-to-day living. Happiness is something that sometimes people think can be developed by buying the new sports car, getting the piece of jewelry, you know, redoing the living room, whatever it is. But again, those are temporary sort of feelings.
Yes.
How does this lead to maybe a more fulfilling happiness? And how do we know when we're actually happy?
Yeah.
Is there a way to define that? Or?
That was going to be one of my first comments. I feel like everyone defines happiness a little bit different. And I've actually heard the statement, what if happy isn't my goal? What if peace is my goal?
Peace,
or what
solace,
if content? Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's whatever feels good to you and feels expansive and feels in flow. I think everyone can define differently what feels good to them, but I think most of us kind of have an idea of when does my body feel contracted and when do I feel expansive and in flow.
I've even heard some people say, don't try to achieve happiness, try for joyful.
Sure.
Because joyful might be even more a deeper experience when you're joyful.
Sure. Absolutely. I think whatever the label is, for me, the feeling is really, I feel like at the core, a lot of it stems from self-love and self-worth. And if we don't truly love all parts of ourselves, if we don't truly feel like we're worthy in and of itself, period, we're constantly going to look for the person to love us or the thing that I need to have because I think I'm not worthy unless I have that thing. And so for me, a lot of it really starts from that. And we have been taught and conditioned that we need all of the things out here in order to feel that. But I really think once we can look within and establish, again, whatever those mean, then when I love myself, when I feel worthy, then I feel good. For me, I feel good. I define that as peace and content, and everyone can define it however they want. So for me, it's self-love, self-worth. Those are some of the real baselines that I think we're all looking for by chasing some of those outside things.
I think listening is also important. You know, sometimes people are so busy talking at, they're not listening to the person, and maybe sometimes the person in their own way, they're crying out, they're looking for advice, they're looking for guidance. And that's one of the things I know that's very big for you, is you like to really listen to what they have to say, sort of absorb it, and then find different ways to work with them, to lead them to understanding their purpose and achieve the soulfulness and maybe that joy and happiness, right?
Absolutely.
Listening is important, and establishing trust between you and the client and you. Let's talk about some of that.
Yeah. So in listening, this came in interestingly a few weeks ago as a lesson for me in terms of what listening can really offer to somebody else. And so a lot of us were talking with the, what am I going to say? How am I going to respond? How am I looking? We're not really paying attention to the other person. But one of the things I learned with listening is if I really listen to someone and allow them to speak, a lot of our own transformations come from our own aha moments. And so in allowing someone to speak and giving them the space to speak, they might come to their own aha moment that I don't even have to do anything with. I've just given them the space to express that they've never had before, because a lot of us, again, we're just talking to talk. And so that was one of my lessons, that is something I can be more intentional about, is let's let them speak and express so that way they can get to their own lesson. I'm here to help people transform, sometimes by not even having to do anything, but give them space and to listen.
This is so important. You know, why do you think, I've always heard that even coaches are coached. Why do you think it's so important to have a coach?
Sure. I love having my coach because, one, she helps me see my blind spots. And because we've got this little view of how we think we are and how we think the world is. And so they can help me find my blind spots and push me to move beyond my blind spots. So that's been really beneficial. Another thing has been being on the receiving end of being of having a coach can help me be in the shoes of my clients and understand how they might be receiving me. And so that way I can shape my experience as a coach based on how I've been as a client and make sure that I'm meeting them in the way that they need to be met.
See, that's really important, because a lot of times people don't realize that. And I think it's one of the things that makes you unique as a coach. Tell us about some of the other things that you think make you stand out. Obviously, you know, you can relate to your clients because you walk the walk, talk the talk. So you have your own personal experiences that might connect with something that they're going through. What are some of the other things that make you stand out?
I feel like one of the other things that makes me stand out is I understand how we create our own reality from an energetic perspective. And I understand that everything that we see in our outside world, so the jobs we hold, the relationships we're in, it's all a reflection of what our inner energy believes. Again, who I am, what am I worth, how is the world inherently scary, or is the world inherently supportive? All of those go into this energy pot that we are. It then creates our outer reality. And so I feel like a lot of people, they try to jam changes into the outer reality when they haven't really looked at the energy first. And if there's a mismatch, then the outer reality isn't going to stick, because our energy is first and foremost in each of our lives. And so I go to the inner work first. I'd go to the inner energy, and I like to help people deconstruct from an energy perspective. Let's look at the fears. Let's look at the emotions. Let's release those. Let's call in that which you want instead. And then doing that slowly over time, that's when you get lasting results, because your energy is changing, and then your outer reality will shift to match, because it has to, because that's universal law. And so it might feel slower, but it's more long lasting in the long term. And so I feel like understanding the energetic world and how our life gets created from our energy, that is something that really differentiates me from other coaches who are just looking at mindset work,
right,
or just looking at, well, let me teach you some negotiating skills so you can go for that higher salary. Well, if you don't believe you're worth that higher salary and you get it, it's not going to stick around very long.
What causes a lot of that? Do you think it's outside influences? Is it things that have happened maybe in childhood? Why do people have these limiting beliefs and this lack of self-worth? I know people, they turn to other areas to try to find that. Social media brings in a whole new, ball of craziness sometimes too, because you're projecting different things, and sometimes what you're projecting is not even accurate, and what you're seeing other people project isn't necessarily the life they're living.
Yeah.
So then that adds to it's like fuel in the fire. You don't feel like you're up to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about those self-limiting beliefs, where that all comes from, and maybe the component of how social media has added in some ways to that.
So a lot of it, they will say, comes from childhood. So in Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, he talks about how when we're kids, our brain waves are in more of a hypnotic state. And so we're really absorbing our environment. We're absorbing what people tell us. We're observing how we're treated, what gets us love, what keeps us safe. And we're planting all of those beliefs into our psyche, which then at some point, they say around age 7, I don't think you turn 7 and suddenly it's all locked in there. But at some point that becomes the unconscious beliefs that you carry into adulthood. And so a lot of those, we're just kids in a grown-up body because we're continuing to play out the pains of our childhood over and over. Yeah. And so that's where a lot of them come from. If we want to get a little wooer than that, some of them, energy is really sticky, and so some of them could come from our genetic line. We could carry pains from our ancestors that were never cleared, and so that's where some of them come from. I've been dealing with pains from past lives that I've been bringing in that needed to be cleared. And so we can't blame any one source, really. Energy is one of those things that, again, it's beyond our brain's understanding of how it works. And so we come packaged with a lot of our pain, for better, for worse, and unfortunately it's our job to clear it if we truly want to transform. And so I like to say that because I don't want people to feel blame around what they hold, because it's not their fault, especially for those that come from before childhood. But it's our responsibility to clear, for better, for worse.
I wrote down this quote that you really like. You like the quote, "Everything you need to change your life," and I've heard this before, is already inside you.
Yes.
Tell us about that. A lot of the life's questions, and we seek the answers outside of ourselves, but a lot of it's really within, but maybe it's been suppressed.
It's been suppressed and it's been covered up. So I think of it as our soul. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so we are here as souls. Our souls, they know who we are. They know how we're here to serve all our small corner of the planet. They know, they have clarity on the next steps to take in order to do all of those things. But we've been conditioned to believe that I need that certification, or this person told me which degree I should get because, I was good at math and science, and so that made sense to get an engineering degree. And so a lot of us have just grown up listening to the outside world to tell us what they think we should do with our lives. And it's all well-intended. I'm not trying to blame anybody. Everyone was well-intended, but it caused us to suppress our inner voice, and that inner voice is so quiet, and the outside world is so much louder. And so it's all there. That's what I've learned. It's all there. We just have to peel back the layers of who we are not to really uncover who it is that we are.
How about setting boundaries too? So many people have trouble setting boundaries. They're just open and so available all the time. Having some boundaries, healthy boundaries, can be really good for mind, body, and spirit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think goes back to probably I'm sure there's some beliefs around that. One of them for me that comes to mind is the idea that we're supposed to give all of ourselves and sacrifice who we are. And that's, again, a mindset that some people grew up with. And so that's one of the beliefs under their psyche that is sort of running their life. And so that's where it's helpful to know, why is this my behavior? What is it I believe that's causing this behavior? Does it feel good? Because for some people, if they're not ready to deal with that, then they're not ready to deal with it. And so it has to come to a point where not having boundaries is painful enough that I'm going to start looking at, what do I believe about myself? Why am I giving so much? Why am I doing all of these things? If the behavior is not serving them, looking at, well, what is it that I do believe? What will serve me? And then setting up boundaries. Believing that you're worth it is another one. A lot of people don't feel worthy in and of themselves. And so they're looking for that worth to come from other people. And so they don't set boundaries because they want to prove in a way that they're worthy by doing all of the things for all of the other people. So it's really, what is the belief system around why you don't have the boundaries? Because at the end of the day, we're the only one that can set boundaries for ourselves, and we need to feel empowered and capable enough to do that.
I think sometimes too, when people don't feel worthy and they're watching what everybody else is doing, that can create and lead to envy and jealousy.
Yes, absolutely.
And people can act out in that way. They can respond in that way. They just feel so frustrated that this envy and jealousy rises to the surface, right?
Absolutely.
And that could be problematic.
Yes, it can.
So have you dealt with any clients who express some of that envy and jealousy maybe because they don't feel good and they're not addressing themselves, they're looking at the outer world? Well, how come they get to do that? And why are they getting all the love and respect? And why are they revered? You know, I'm a good person too, but they just are suppressing.
Yes, I have not personally dealt with clients necessarily with that, but what I would answer to that is, I think there's a couple different things here. So some get stuck in the jealousy and the victimhood of, well, they get to do that. How come their life is that good? And you know, I could never do that. My life is X, Y, and Z. And so that's really that victim mentality. No one is going to transform as long as you've got a victim mentality and you're not willing to take responsibility for your life. But I also think in some cases, envy and jealousy, when looked at from a more empowering perspective, it can actually give you a breadcrumb to something that you want out of life. And so when I started to get jealous about people who had their own business and they were traveling a little bit for work and their families were going on all these vacations, for me that was a sign that this is possible for you too. This is something, again, that inner voice inside of me wanted to show is possible for me in my life and would enhance my life. And so I think you can look at envy and jealousy a couple different ways. One from a disempowering perspective, but one really from it's lighting up something inside of me that's actually possible for me, and let's look at it from that lens.
Not tear the other people down because they're having this experience, but saying, gee, let's see, there are ways that I can facilitate this for myself and for my friends and family. You're also, and congratulations, a published author.
I am.
And we have evidence of that on this table right here on our anchor desk.
That's right.
Tell us about this. This is kind of cool, huh?
It is.
I'll show it up. I'll hold it up for our single camera here so we can see it. Guides. This is kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, we haven't talked a little about this
There it is there. Yeah.
Early, so as I was getting into the energy healing and some of that, one of the circles I fell into was a psychic, medium, intuitive circle. Yeah. And I started realizing I wanted to learn to do that for myself, because when it's really expensive to have to pay people all the time to get your own readings. Two, if there's something that comes in at 3 in the morning, I wanted to be able to get my own information and learn from it. And so early 2020, I started working Marilyn Aloria. She's the featured author in this book. And she's got a couple programs where she teaches people how to connect with their own intuitive voices. And so that was something that I got in and I started learning from her. And as I was exiting out of that program, she was given the opportunity to be the featured author for the guides book, Spirit Guides. And it's part of a series, so there's animals and ancestors and nature. And so there's different authors for different parts of the series. And they were doing a call for submissions because it's part teaching, but also part, you'll see there's a bunch of different names here, and there's even more authors within. So they really wanted to make it more personal. What is someone else's experience of meeting a spirit guide? And so I submitted a story, and my story was selected.
Wow.
And so I'm a published author.
Tell us a little about the story.
My story is I use my kids. So I say spirit likes to work through my kids sometimes because that's, as a mom, they're young. That's what I'm really hyper-focused on. And so the story talks about my son and then my daughter, but it starts with my son and how I dropped him off at daycare one time. And he didn't want me to go. He was kind of crying.
Separation anxiety,
Yeah, he's been worse at that than my daughter. Some days he's great and he just runs in and it's bye mom and he gets his little snack, and some days he cries. And so this was one of those mornings when he was really crying and didn't want me to go. As I left, I said I was feeling that heartbreak, that feeling of heartbreak. And so I know enough to say, okay, where is this coming from? This is something. And so I felt intuitively that it was some old pain that I had from some time as a child when I wanted attention from somebody and I didn't get it. And it could have been a teacher, it could have been who knows where it comes from, but it was there and it was a pain that was triggered. And so on one element, it taught me my inner little girl, my inner child, if you've heard the term inner child, needs a little bit of love right now.
Right.
And so I did that on my drive home the best I could. And as I was sitting in meditation, reflecting on the experience, then I got the hit that it's also a reflection of me not working with my higher self as a guide as much. And my higher self really wants to come in and talk with me more. And so it was really two-dimensional. It was the inner child in me needing some love and attention from this experience, and then me in my adult form reaching out to my higher self for love and direction and support. And so it became what that taught me, and I've really been really diligent about working with my higher self as my main spirit guide since then, to really connect, establish that relationship, understand how to get messages and how to get guidance from my higher self as a spirit guide. And then my daughter comes in towards the end because I'd been ignoring my inner child a little bit. And that reminded me that my inner little girl needed some love too.
That's funny. So maintaining the inner child within you while also working with your own children, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Spirit guide, for people that are watching that may say, she's mentioning spirit guide. How do you define what a spirit guide is?
Sure, and Marilyn goes into a lot of that in the book. It could be any non-physical entity that you connect with as a teacher. And so some people think of guardian angels. Some people don't connect necessarily with angels. They just use guides as more of a general term. Some might connect with animals, numbers. It's really what is giving you a message from a non-physical place, I would say. Something that's you connect with, that's really guiding you and teaching you. And so it could be, some people go directly to God or source, whatever term they use for it.
Divine.
And so, divine, yes. So any non-physical entity that you can connect with that really helps enhance your life or reflect places where you can learn and grow.
I know one of the things that you would like to do is sort of help people come to the point of living their best lives.
Yes.
We hear that expression a lot. How do you define someone's best life?
For me, their best life is the life that their soul planned for them before they came into these bodies. And so I believe that we're here to live a good life. We're here to push the boundaries, to grow and expand who we are and what we're capable of. But again, spiritual beings having a human experience, we get so caught up in the human experience, the pains, the traumas, the belief systems, that we forget that we're none of it. We're actually this entity who's unlimited and capable of so much more than our brains can imagine. And so I really want to help people get back to who it is that you are? What did you intend to do? One, because I think just life will be better if all of us are happy, right? No one.
Right.
It's so hard if everywhere you go, everyone's just complaining about life. And I think life would be so much better if all of us were empowered to live happy, but also then we would change the world because we're here. We're not afraid to impact our small portion of the world in the way that we are made to impact. And so it's really multidimensional. It's living as your soul because that's what we're here to do, because that's what feels good. But also we're here to just make things a little bit better, and we all have a part to play in that. And so let's drop the fear and just go ahead and do that.
Do you believe in sort of like the law of attraction, or if we put the positive energy out, chances of positive coming back are good. But if we're putting out negative energy, the chances of attracting negative energy are pretty high too.
I believe in that. I believe in that to a part of that. So I was just looking up the Wayne Dyer quote: "You don't attract what you think; you attract what you are." And so, on some level, yes, in the moment, I can put out some negative thoughts and negative actions. And I have found that in the moment, if I'm having a bad day, I get a bad day back. I get people being crabby at me. In the moment, if I'm having a good day, people are generally much happier towards me. And so I do think that there is some of that. But at any given moment, we're also just attracting the sum of all of our energy. And so if we have a lot of pain that's been suppressed, even if we're pretending we're happy in the moment, a lot of that pain is going to be reflected back to us in life at some point. And so that's where it's really helpful to understand that we're always creating, even if we're not intentionally doing anything, and that we're creating based on the energy that is in our energy body. And so yes, we are attracting to us. There is a law of attraction. It's one of many other universal laws that all play together. That's just the more popular, that's the Hollywood one, but it's got some less famous cousins that all play together. And yes, we are always attracting into our experience that which is in our energy body.
Let's talk about a session with you. How does it work from the beginning? Maybe you can take us through the beginnings. Do you do an assessment? How does it work?
So in the beginning, I ask my clients, well, how do you want to feel in life? And most of them have never thought about how they want to feel. Everyone thinks about, what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? But I want to know how they want to feel, because the feeling comes first. And so we work through that, we establish that, and then we go through a process where I tune them into that energy in their body, and we start to call that in. Because once you set the intention to start to call it in, then the universe goes to work for you. But what happens is they come to me and their life is here, and they want their life to be up here. And down here, they have a bunch of beliefs that have gotten them to this point in their life. They got to shake all those off in order to get to here. And so then what happens is life feels hard, because all of these things start coming up, all these places where we're shown our guilt and our shame and our limitations. And so in subsequent sessions, I'm really just reacting to what's coming up in your life, and let's look at that, let's heal that, let's release that, because I believe that there's a divine order to everything, and we're only given hard things in the moment that we're ready to be healed from them. And so I'm not going to go back 5 years to talk about that hard thing that happened if it's not coming up in your life right now, because what's coming up in your life right now is divinely what's ready to actually be looked at and healed. And so I'm actually very responsive to their life. What is the hard thing? What's giving you the most pain? Let's talk about that. And then teaching them how to look at your own pains, how to release your own energy, how to tap into the energy that you want to feel. And so a lot of it is more of an energetic dance. I really want to teach them how to maintain control of their own energy, and how to, because then again, that's what creates the ultimate reality and what shapes around them as they shift their energy.
Are you working with individuals, or are you also working with couples, with groups? Are you going into companies and organizations? How does it work, or is it all of the above?
It could be whatever anyone is interested in. So I know we haven't talked about human design yet, but my human design is I'm a projector. And so really how my energy works is I am meant to talk about, here's what I do, here's what I offer, and then those who are ready to come to me will come to me. And that's when I can work with them because I know that they're ready. I know that they understand what it is that I do. And so in the past, it's been mostly individuals from a one-on-one coaching perspective. I have run group sessions at my corporate job that I'm leaving now in 2 weeks, but I have been teaching classes there, and there is an interest of people they've been dabbling, they've been learning about law of attraction, we've been learning about money mindset and happiness. We haven't gone deep with any of them yet, but I am going where the invitations come from. Because when the invitations come, that's when I know people are ready for the transformation. I can't force myself anywhere because that means they're not ready.
Got to meet them where they're at.
Yes.
And take it from there.
Yep.
You mentioned human design. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. Have you heard about it at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So human design is it's a blueprint of how our energy is designed to play in the grand scheme of the universe, is what some will say. So there's 5 different types which dictate how our energy interacts. So some, for example, there's manifestors, and their energy is really repelling. They're here to say the things that really get people going, and they're like the visionaries. They've got these ideas. Other people want to act, and they love the ideas. There's generators and manifesting generators. Those are the people who are here to do a lot of the work. They've got a big energy supply, and so they can do and carry out a lot of the work. Projectors, which is what I fall into, we're here to lead people. So I'm not here to be a doer. I'm here to be a leader and a guide on this is how the energy works. This is how I think if you wanted to work within that energy, it would be most efficient for you to do that. And so I need a lot of rest because projectors do not have an internal source of power. And so as a projector, that's what I'm here. I'm here to be a teacher. I'm here to be a leader. I'm not here to actually be a doer. And then the small portion are reflectors, which are really, I think of them as like the focus group. They kind of come in and they say, oh, this energy doesn't feel so good, or this energy is on point, and they're just reflecting what it is that they experience. And so there's a lot more to it than that. It goes really deep into what energy we have consistent access to, what energy we don't have consistent access to. So it's the very tip of the coin, but it's really meant to teach us how does our energy play in the grand scheme of things. And I think this invitation is a perfect example of my projectorness, because the invitation, the idea as a projector is if I'm standing up, if I'm being seen, if I'm talking about what it is that I'm doing, the universe is going to find the invitations that are right for me. And these invitations, I will say, kind of came out of nowhere. So I think I'm a perfect example of how...
And the key is how you respond to them, right? Because sometimes people have opportunities knocking at the door, and they're afraid to open the door.
Exactly.
They're afraid to react because maybe it's something that is out of their, the wheelhouse, the comfort zone. It's something that they're not used to doing or being involved in. And then all of a sudden, they're like, wow, I was, I can not only check that off the bucket list type thing, but it's something that I really like, something that I'm in tune with.
Yeah.
And it allows you to be able to project even more and project and connect, right?
Absolutely.
Which is key.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
We've been going through, as I mentioned, some interesting times the last couple of years. It's a lot of people that have been struggling on many different levels, and everybody's trying to help one another as best as possible. Are there some words of encouragement that you can offer maybe to somebody that's watching right now, or somebody that has a loved one who's struggling with something at the moment, something that maybe you could share with us?
So I can certainly understand that the last few years have been really hard for a lot of people. And for me, they've actually been some of my best. Because what I learned over the past few years was I don't have to let what is in the outside world dictate my reality. I actually get to choose, is this a perspective that empowers me? Is it disempowering me? And I chose that I didn't want to make decisions based on fear anymore. So yes, I could be scared about something, but I didn't want that to drive my decision-making factor. And so all of those things, I realized that I am in control of my own reality. I get to choose how I feel despite what's happening in the outside world. I get to choose what I want in life. And in doing so, I really believe that I've been going through this lesson so that I can embody the lessons and then teach other people how to do the same. And so the first thing I want everyone to know is it's possible. We are all meant to live these great lives. And there's been a lot of suffering. And I really feel bad for the people who have been suffering a lot. What I want them to know is the suffering is not coming up because they're meant to suffer. The suffering is coming up because they're meant to move past it. There is so much freedom on the other side of our pain. And if we would look at it from that perspective, that life doesn't happen to me, life happens for me. And the things that are hard for us are coming up because those are our growth areas in the moment. And if everyone could look at life that way, I feel like there would be a little bit more ease in what was happening. We wouldn't stay stuck in the suffering. Sure, there would be that short-term pain because we have to feel the pain to get to the other side of it, but we wouldn't identify with the pain. We wouldn't take it on and just make it so long-term. And so I would love people to know that you get to create your own reality. If what you're living doesn't feel good, you get to be in control of what it is that does feel good. And the suffering is here to really show you where you can learn and grow next.
Which is incredible. I mean,
Yes.
that's so important. The other thing too is you hear so much about people talking about fear. How do you define it?
Yeah.
How do you define what that is? There's different levels of it, and fear can really be very debilitating and very limiting. It's, you come to the edge of the cliff and you're like, okay, what do I do next? And sometimes it's a cliff that you've created for yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us about dealing with fear and how you deal with it.
Yes, I'll start with the obvious answer and then I'll break it down. So we hear a lot of people in this space, they talk about fear and love, and fear is not love. And I get it, but that wasn't helpful to me because there's so much packed into what fear is. And so I back into fear by saying, well, what is the opposite? So if who we are is a soul, we are here, we are an unlimited energy. Our soul is wired for health and happiness and abundance, unconditional love and compassion, and all of the feel-goods. That is who we are as a soul. So then, for me, fear is anything that is not those things. And so fear could be a literal fear. Those are the obvious ones. I'm afraid of flying. I'm afraid of dying. But the way we also classify fear is it's those limiting self-beliefs. It's those, well, I'm not worthy of X, Y, and Z. Or it could be the perspective of lack. A lot of people also talk about lack, which is not enough time, not enough money. None of those things are in alignment with the energy of who we are as souls. And so I look at all of that as fear. And that's what I want to help my clients see is where are the places where we are limiting ourselves? What are we afraid of doing? Because in reality, our souls are unlimited and so powerful. And so if it's not unlimited, if it's not powerful, if it's not self-affirming, to me it's got to be fear, and we've got to look at that.
That's so really important. What does the empowered living space mean? That sounds really fascinating to me.
Yeah. The empowered living space. So when I was building the concept of my business and I knew I wanted to get into coaching, well, what kind of coaching? What is the concept going to be?
Right.
I was really resonating with this concept of empowered living, which I first learned from Dr. David Hawkins. He wrote the book Power versus Force, and he also developed the scale of consciousness. And so the scale of consciousness, really briefly, is, I think of it as the perspectives we take on life. And so the bottom part of the chart he considers is really, we've got these victim perspectives on life, where life happens to us, nothing ever goes right. Those are the bottom parts of the scale. And then towards the top of the scale, it's the joys and the compassions and all the way up to the enlightenment. And so what he said in the book was most people don't understand that you can actually climb the scale. Most people just stay wherever they are for their entire life. But there's a reflection point, which he considers the point of empowerment. And he says that is the point in life when people stop blaming the outside world for everything that happens to them,
Right.
and they start to take full responsibility for everything in their life. And that's really the perception that I really liked, was okay, what does it look like if I'm taking that into my life as an empowered person? That means I'm no longer blaming my kids for making me mad. That means when they make me mad, I'm saying, okay, well, what trigger did they hit? What is going on inside of me? Maybe in some cases I'm tired. I haven't put up enough boundaries. And so it's really taking responsibility for all of the things. If this bad thing happens or this hard thing happens, what is the lesson for me? And so it's really taking full responsibility of everything that happens in our life and using that as a learning and a growth opportunity. So that's where I really pulled in the concept of empowered living. And then I pulled in space because in healing, you're giving space to a lot of people. And so I wanted it to show that you've got space for your transformation. I'm holding space for you to go through your transformation. So that's where I got the empowered living space.
That's incredible. And you consider yourself an empowered coach.
Empowerment coach, yes.
Yeah, empowerment coach.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, define that. Define what an empowerment coach actually is, and
Yes.
some of the additional work you do.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's taking that concept of empowered living and applying it into their lives. And so really helping them see the places, what are those beliefs that are disempowering you? And then combining the energy healing on top of that, because in my experience with the belief, there's always a suppressed emotion underneath. That's why just mindset work is really hard to get anywhere, because you haven't dealt with the emotion. And so from the empowerment coach perspective, we're looking at the mindset. That's what's the disempowering belief. And then we do the energy healing to release the block, so that way we can plug into the truth and start to pull that authentic energy back in. But then I also look at it from a different angle of just from an overall energy perspective. Where am I giving my energy away? Where am I giving my power away? So it ties again a little bit into looking for outside people to tell me what it is that I need in my life. And so if someone comes on TikTok, I don't watch TikTok, but I hear a lot about TikTok.
Yeah, I know.
And says,
that's the clock on the wall.
Yeah, right. For me, I don't even have it downloaded. But I hear about TikTok and someone says, oh, you need this new makeup. Right? And I say, oh, well, they said I must need this new makeup, so I need this new makeup.
You need this.
Yeah, for me, that's disempowering, because I'm putting my decision-making authority on someone outside of me. So it's really where all the places we're disempowering ourselves, where are we putting our authority on other people, how maybe is my energy leaking. So in some cases, there's just energy leakages that we're not aware of. And so it's really looking at all of the things that are coming up and really helping people take control of their beliefs, their energy, so that way they feel like they are in charge of their energy, they are the best authority in their lives, and all of the things.
So you really are an empowered empowerment coach.
Sure, I like that, yes.
See, that's why we're both saying empowered.
Yep.
Why do you love doing this work so much? I mean, obviously this is a major transition and transformation in your own life.
It is.
And you've come to the understanding that you have to do this work. It's really calling you. It's part of who you are. It's in your DNA.
Yes.
And you've done what you've done with the corporate world and have served that well. And I'm sure they're very happy that you have. But you're now serving your needs.
Yes.
And people are going to have more of the essence of who you really are through the work that you're doing.
Yes.
So what are some of those continued blessings and joys that you're experiencing that are helping facilitate this?
You know, I've thought about that, because part of the question I've asked is, well, why can't I just do this on myself and then go live on a beach and not care about anybody else? And it's just, I am wired to help people. That is just what my soul decided to do before I came here. My soul knew that I would be able to understand this a few steps ahead of other people, so that way I could then turn around and offer some help to those people who are still suffering. And so I think we're all wired in some way to want to help others in whatever way that works for us. It might be through art or music, or even just bringing beauty into someone's life. It doesn't all have, it's different for everybody.
Even communication.
Communication.
Like this, conversations.
Yes, you are here to pull people's stories out of them, so that way their stories can be shared. I think we're all here, we're all wired to improve the planet somehow in our own little way. And I really do believe that I am here to help people step into their best lives, step into their most authentic version of them. That's what I'm here to do. And when I do that, I get this energy. In some cases, it feels like it works through me. It's not always
right.
me.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
just becoming
conduit.
a conduit to some of it. And it just feels so good. And it feels so expansive. And so one of my coach, Allison Scammell, she talks about when you're really in your gifts, you get energy deposits because we're getting filled up with the energy of that which we are here to offer. And so selfishly, it just feels really good to be able to do this for other people and run this through me and bring it to other people's lives. But I also feel a sense of purpose in doing so and really feel like if I wasn't doing this, my life would be a lot harder because Spirit knows this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Right.
And it makes life hard until we get back on track.
Would you say you're living your best life right now?
I'm working towards it. I think there's always growth. I don't think we ever hit a point where we can say this is it. And so I'm stepping into a bigger version of myself right now.
Which is probably better, because if you say that you're living the exact best life, well, that can change and morph with life being lived, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it can be very limiting to just say, okay, this is the pinnacle.
Yeah.
The pinnacle of what? It's an ongoing process,
Yes.
right? So life can be better.
It can, yes.
But yeah, that's really cool. This has been fascinating.
Thank you.
Congratulations on all this work and making that decision.
Yes.
I know which wasn't necessarily easy, though underneath it was bubbling up that you have to leave the corporate world and bring this beautiful work, energy healing work to so many people. Congratulations on it, huh? And thanks for stopping by and coming all the way here to the television studio and sharing your journey, sharing your story, and being so real and authentic about it too.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. The studio is beautiful. The area is beautiful. I've never been to Connecticut, and so this gave me a chance to sleep in my own bed without getting kicked in the back for a few nights by my little kids. And this has been really great. Thank you for the opportunity to share and bring some of this out.
Continued success and joy and blessing in your life, and we'll chat again soon. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Good luck.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. If you'd like to learn more and connect with Andrea Andree, visit her website, AndreaAndree.com. For Close Up Television and Radio, I'm Jim Masters. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.